So I'm Kathleen O'Brien, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I also have a degree in public health, maternal child health. And I've been working in the field for I started undergraduate working at a women's health clinic, so more than 20 years. So I think the beginning early signs are not obvious, and that's one of the problems, is that people don't realize that it's not okay for a person to try to control your behavior, to try to limit who you see, when you see them, or to monitor your social media or your phone calls, because often it's a slow process if in a relationship. It's like a frog in a pot of water. They don't know it's boiling until it's already bubbling. And so I see women who, it begins with littler things like limiting contact and belittling them. So that if they don't have contact with other people, they don't realize that the situation's not normal, and their friends don't give them perspective, or their family. And also the belittling, there's this undermining of self-esteem that then makes the victim believe that nobody else would want them anyway, that they're not good enough to leave because they wouldn't be wanted. So those signs are the early signs that somebody trying to control your behavior, or putting you down, or calling you names and making you feel bad about yourself. The signs when they become obvious are bruising that can't be really explained, or marks on their body, or a fear, like afraid they have to leave right now because their partner is looking for them. So kind of unexplained fear and isolation. That's what they try to do, is isolate the victim so you don't have as much perspective. I think the most protective factor for a woman, probably for a man too, is that you've had a healthy childhood and you know what is right and what is wrong, and you're able to speak up for yourself. Because what happens often is when that line has been crossed when you're young and you don't know that that's not supposed to have happened, or maybe you even know it, but you're so traumatized that you can't respond. So then when you are in a situation that's dangerous again, you freeze. Whereas another person who was raised in a healthy, protective environment would fight back or run or get away. But a person who's been traumatized often just goes straight back into the trauma and is paralyzed, and just thinks about getting out of the situation alive, and may even dissociate, leave their body. Their mind is gone, but their body's still present. So I know that perpetrators can spot somebody who's a victim. I know this because not only of statistics, but seeing it in my practice. Those who've been raped as a child are the ones most likely to be raped as an adult. And I believe that a perpetrator can see that they're not going to fight back. So that's the unfortunate truth, is that once victimized, often more than once. Just as I was saying, one of the earlier cases, some people don't even know that what's happening is abuse. But a woman can be raped in a marriage. A woman can be raped when in a relationship. It used to be, in my day and age, it was called blue balls, where the guy had to be able to have an orgasm after he's been aroused. But there's this attitude that a woman can only, if she goes so far, she has to go all of the way. Or that if she's in a relationship, she somehow owes it to him to have sex with him. Or I'm sure it can go the other way. I know I've been speaking mostly of female victims because that's who I'm familiar with. I'm sure it could go the other way as well, that if you're in relationship with somebody, you somehow owe to them to be sexual. Definitely call the Domestic Violence Hotline, which is connected to the YWCA, and they have services, and they have a shelter that's undisclosed location, so they can get and they can coach a woman to prepare. The most violent time in a relationship is when you're trying to leave. And so they can coach the woman to leave safely, and without either publicly or without his knowledge. And so they have shelter. They also have counseling, group and individual. And Verity is a wonderful local resource, either in the moment right after the trauma has happened, or for ongoing counseling and therapy.
We were like on and off for like at that point, I think it was like 2.5 years, maybe 3. Yeah, because like in school, they teach you about domestic violence, and they kind of give you like a summary and a rundown of like these are like what a little cycle. So within myself, like I started recognizing some cycles, and then that's why like I went to leave, and then when I went to leave is when everything got worse. It was interesting because the relationship with him was kind of like an escape route, because I was at that time in an emotionally abusive relationship, just not being aware of it because I was so young. I was with this person when I was 13. It's your first love, all that great stuff. But then it turned out once we got older and grew up together, there was a pull. Like he ended up being more interested in gangs, and I was more interested in like we need to get out of like this ghetto environment that we're in, because it's you're surrounded in an environment where it's normal for car break-ins, it's normal for shootings outside of your neighborhood. And he would always say you're a product of your environment, and I would always be against it. So we're like a little tug of war there. So I was emotionally going through a lot in that relationship, trying to get him to see the bigger picture of life, and it just was going nowhere. He ended up being in and out of juvie, and then I believe it was when he was in juvie that I started talking to the guy who ended up assaulting me. And it started out great. Like, you would think, like, oh, where has this person been all my life? Like, I could talk to you like an open book. Like, you're just, you name it. Like, if it came to random flowers, he was there. Like, you name it. And it's funny because the first time we spoke, it was just out of nowhere. Like, we were, like, in high school, and, I didn't want to be in class. So I cut out of class to go to the bathroom, go walk around. And it just so happened he was outside too, and he just approached me. And then it's the way he approached me was very like I feel like I know you. Like, it was just kind of like a magnet, I guess you can say. And texting started happening, phone calls started happening. I was really indecisive of what I wanted, who I wanted, what exactly I wanted for myself in life. That's when things started going wrong. And I say that because, like I mentioned, when we started talking, he had no idea that I had a boyfriend. Like, it just wasn't something I brought up because I was getting such an emotional release that I didn't want it to go away necessarily. So once he found out, I just kind of took it like, all right, let me put my little tough phase on and be like, yeah, I have a boyfriend, what about it? And he was kind of hurt, like, oh, well, you should have told me that, like, I would have, not been talking to you. And I'm like, oh, it's fine, like, you can talk to me, and you don't. So that's kind of like where it started shifting. So him and I both decided, like, we're still going to be seeing each other, even though I have a boyfriend. At this time we were together for like 4 years or something. But he had thought that I would eventually leave my boyfriend. I didn't. And then that's when the blackmail started. Like, oh, well, do people know? I'm like, no, people don't know about you and I because there's nothing between us. So as soon as I said there's nothing between us, it was like a whole, like, it just spiraled out of control. It was never physical, it was just like, it was just going downhill. Yeah, it was definitely blackmail. I have texts, I have our phone calls, I have pictures, you're gonna regret it. Was his line, you're gonna regret it. This was, I think, our third year, maybe 2.5 time around, where I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend at the time after like 5 years or something, maybe 6. And I was getting closer to this guy that I was seeing. And at this point, we were like pretty much like, I guess you could say, living together, um, talking about a future. You know, it was just all exciting. But me myself, I was kind of having like cold feet. I'm like, I'm still at this time. I was out of high school. I was 19. I was like, I'm freshly out of high school. I haven't started my career yet. Like, I don't want to just settle, even if this is the person who I have a great time with. And then I also didn't want to settle because there was times where his jealousy would be over the top, or if I would leave and if I wouldn't tell him where I was going, it was just my phone would be blowing off the hook. Like, where you at? Who you with? When you coming back? You didn't tell me. And before that, I remember one incident where I wanted to go to the fair, but I just for the food. I'm not much of a fair person, just for the food. It was pretty good. But I just wanted to go with my really close best friend. Like, I didn't want no guys. Like, I didn't want nothing. I just wanted for her and I to have like that one-on-one time. So I didn't tell him that I was going to the fair because he had invited me to the fair, and I said, no, I'm okay. I don't go. I don't do that. So what I did was I didn't want to pay for parking at the fair, and he ended up living like down the street from the fair. So I ended up dropping off my car at his mom's house, and then we walked it to the fair because I'm like, he's working anyways. He's not gonna know. I was wrong. So he ended up calling me. I didn't answer because here I am having a good time, and he goes to his mom's house and sees my car but doesn't see me. So all of a sudden, like, he's just blowing me off the hook. So finally I answer, and he's like, where are you? I was like, I'm at the fair. And he goes off, like, why are you at the fair? Who are you with? You're such a liar. And I was like, calm down, like, it's not that big of a deal. I just wanted to be with my friend. And he was like, no, where you at? I'm gonna go pick you up. I was like, are you serious? He was like, yeah. I was like, okay. So I told my friend, like, hey, like, we gotta go. I'm sorry. Like, he's tripping out. She's like, it's fine. I already got my funnel cake anyways. So I'm like, all right, cool, me too. So we're like walking to the front of the fair, but he's not there still. So we ended up crossing the street, like where the veteran building is, and this fool almost ran me over because he was speeding like so quick to get there. And he was like, get in the car. I was like, you need to calm down. He was like, just get in the car. So I was like, all right. So my friend was like, you know what? Like, this is intense. Like, I'll go first. Like, I know he won't do anything to me. I'll go first. I was like, all right. So she got in the back, and then I got in the front. He just like took off, and he was just like cussing at me and like just going crazy, like verbally just being so like over the top. Finally, we got to his mom's house. He has to go back to work because he only had like a 15-minute break. So he's like throwing a fit, and I was just really like closed off. Like, if you get that angry with me, like, either A, I'm gonna get angry with you back, or B, I'm gonna just ignore you and let you act a fool. So I decided I'm gonna go with B. I'm gonna just ignore you. So we ended up getting back to his house. He ends up having to leave. He's like, can you take me to work? And I was like, no, I can't take you to work. Like, you could take yourself because you brought yourself here. So I ended up getting in my car and I'm ready to leave. And then he like yells out like, hey, where are you going? And like, so I stop and I was like, what do you want? He's like, I want to ride to work. I was like, okay. So I give him a ride to work, and then that was that. So that was one, I guess you could say, our biggest argument that we had that kind of like set a light bulb off in my head. Like, I can't be with someone who can't give me my freedom in my own relationship. So I believe a couple days after that, I ended up like packing whatever little bit of stuff I had shared with him at his space, and I just like packed it all in my car. And then he ended up calling me to run an errand for him. So I did, and I took his like niece with me, and it was like in Sebastopol. And this was like the last straw, I feel like, because he ends up again showing up to the place he told me to go, and then just, causing the scene. And it was really, this one really got to me because he was yelling at me, and acting like over the top in front of his niece. And she was like 9, I think. She was like really, really young. And to me, it's like, if you're gonna yell at me, alright, you know, that's cool. Say what you gotta say to me, but don't involve young ones around, because I don't want her to think this is okay. Because it's not. So it was kind of a bipolar moment. He went from going off on me to trying to, he was like holding on to me, like, you know what, no, like, I'm sorry, I promise I'm gonna change, like, I'm gonna treat you better, like, it's not like this, like, it's not gonna be like this with me. And when he said that, he looked in the back of my car, because I had the windows tinted, but he was like, the door was open so you could see the back of my car, and he saw like all my stuff just piled up. And then it was like a light switch, it just flipped. All of a sudden, like, you already had this plan, like, you're gonna leave me, like, I can't believe I fell for your BS again, like, I don't know why I thought it would be different with you. So now he's directing it on me. Yeah, so all of a sudden, you know, he gets up, because he was, whatever, he gets up, he goes to his car, and he picks up the phone, he's like calling someone. And he's like, hey, yeah, like, no, I'm being serious this time, like, I'm gonna do it. And I got mad because I heard him say that. And I was like, you're gonna do what? What have you done to me that you haven't done to me already? Like, what can't you understand? Like, you can't do, I cursed at him, you can't do anything to affect me, is pretty much what I said. So he was like, no, like, this is it, like, I'm done with her. And then he just, like, sped off. So that was it, like, that was our breakup point. And then I kind of, like, felt like this isn't over, like, I kind of felt like a gut, like something's gonna happen. So I made sure not to go home. I went to my sister's house and I told her, I was like, hey, you know, like, if anything happens to me, like, just know that this person did it. She's like, you know, you're being crazy, like, you shouldn't be thinking like that. And I was like, alright, you know, think I'm crazy, but I'm just letting you know. And then it was 2 days later, he was like calling me, and I wasn't answering because I had gone back with my boyfriend of like 6 years. I wasn't answering, and he texted me. He was like, hey, I'm outside. I was like, why are you outside? He was like, because you have my jacket. I was like, I don't think I have your jacket, but if you want, I can go check my car and you'll see I don't have your jacket. He was like, alright, that's fine. So I tell my boyfriend, I was like, hey, I was like, I love you, but I'm gonna go step out real quick. And he kind of already knew, like, our background story, like, with me and the other guy, and he was like, alright, sure, you know, whatever, just go do what you gotta do. And I was like, alright. So then I left, and it was like 10, no, it was like 9:30. It was pretty late, it was dark, it was like in September, so, you know, it gets kind of cold. I walk out, and then I see him, and he's like, you could just see, like, you know, when someone's like, their adrenaline's like up, like they're just like ready, like he just looked ready. So I was like, all right, here we go. So I walk out, and then he's walking out, and the first thing I think to say is like, no, just stop. And then as soon as I said just stop, like, everything was just happened so quickly. He said, you're gonna get what you deserve, is what he said. So this is when he grabbed me by the neck. And I was like, obviously I'm heading towards the car, so I'm like by the car. And I just feel like all this pressure, like, around my neck, and I try pushing forward. And he's pushing me back. So when he's pushing me back, I like fall, you know, like where you park, there's that little stump thing. So I fall on the stump thing. I remember, first thing, I'm on the ground. Next thing I know, I'm like looking up. But when I'm looking up, it's like I'm looking like directly at him. And he's just like, I just feel like his arms just like on me, like on my throat. So at this point, it's like mentally, I was not there. I was like, the first thing that went in my mind was like, I'm 19. Like, is this really how it's gonna end? I was like, I haven't even started life yet. Like, I wasn't even thinking of the pain. I was just thinking of like, this is crazy. So I don't even remember, but I guess that I like grabbed his neck, and I must have like dug into his neck or something, because like they're in the picture, just like you would think like bear claw or something. So I'm looking at him, and it's just like just dark. Like you feel no emotion. Like I went numb emotionally. I couldn't see any reaction from him. Like it was no anger, it was no nothing. It was just like numb. And then I remember just like rolling my head back, and like that was it. Like everything just went dark. Dark. So I didn't understand what was going on. So then I remember feeling like really really cold, and I thought, in my mind, I thought that I was at my boyfriend's house upstairs asleep in my mind, and I thought that the window was open. So I was like like not searching, but I could feel myself like waking up, like trying to touch in my mind like him next to me, trying to tell him that I was cold. But I felt the dirt of the ground, and then I was like, okay. And then I remember like slowly opening my eyes, because you know like when you just wake up, like it's the hardest thing to do. So I'm like opening my eyes, and I remember I like look behind me like slightly, and it's like I see like a pile of blood like on my purse. And I didn't understand like what was going, like I didn't know where I was, and then like all of a sudden like a footage, like him coming out and him assaulting me, like it just started coming back. But I couldn't move. Like I couldn't move. The most I could do was like look up or like look down. And all of a sudden, like where I used to live, like there's always like the gang members kicking it outside, like around those times, like smoking and drinking or whatever. So it just so happened that one of them ended up walking next to a bush where my car was parked, and he was like doing his thing or whatever. And then I couldn't talk, so I started like moving things around, or like you know trying to mumble something, and like he looked over and he was quiet, so I did it again. And then he like screams, and he's like, get over here, get over here, I think this chick's drunk or something. So then the whole group of them come, and then like the mom of theirs comes, and she's like, sweetie, are you okay? Like, are you drunk? And I was like, I can't talk. I'm like, uh-uh. And she's like, what's wrong with you? Get up. And I was like, uh-uh. So then she gets close to me. She's like, are you okay? And I was like, call 911. Sorry. Um, so she called 911, and she came back with the flashlight because it was crazy dark, you know? So she like flashed the light on my face, out of all places. So as soon as she flashed it, like my neck went back, and as soon as it went back, like I guess she just saw like a whole pile of blood like from my neck. And she was like, who did this to you? Who did this to you? And like all of a sudden, like it was like a whole group of people I just felt around me. And I remember just saying like the name over and over and over again. Um, and then finally, like some guy, he was like, hey, I'm a detective. Are you okay? Are you okay? And he was like, who did this to you? Like it was just nonstop same question. So I was like, so and so did this to me. Again, like mumbling. Like I thought I was speaking clearly, but like, yeah, I thought I was speaking clearly. So then he's asking me like, where does he live? I was like, he lives here. And I was like, where's the ambulance? And they're like, they're on their way, just like hang on. So it felt like the longest ever for someone to get there. And then luckily I had told a lady, after she told me she was bleeding, she was like, what do I do, what do I do? And I was like, get me a towel. So someone was holding the towel on my neck to stop the bleeding, because I guess the artery got punctured. And then the other person, the detective, was asking me the questions. And then finally the ambulance gets there, and they're like, they cut all your clothes off. So they have people go away, but it's like, there you are, just like exposed. And like, finally, like, they try to move me. And the most simple movement of getting me to what's that thing? The stretcher. It was like the most pain I have ever felt in my entire life. It felt like stabbing pains. And I didn't understand it. I've never felt pain before. So I was in the ambulance, and like they couldn't find a vein. Like they couldn't find like much of a pulse. I guess it was really subtle. And I remember they were just like, stay with us. Are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah. Like in my mind, I was like, just keep saying yeah, because I just felt like if I stopped talking, like, I don't know if this is it. So I wasn't aware of the resources until after. It's like an overwhelming, like, different places and different like resources you can go to, but that was until like after. I didn't necessarily ever think it was my fault, but I did feel like, I personally think hurt people. So I had seen signs before it ever got to me, and I feel like instead of me walking away like that's your problem, I could have been someone to be like, hey, like, I can maybe help you. You never know that the person you're with, may end up abusing you. There's all kinds of different ways. And then the first thing to know is like acknowledge it, that it's happening to you, and then realize like this is not okay. Like, I don't deserve it. No one else deserves it. But then I feel like the hardest thing to do is realize like you can do without this person. Because in my situation, it was, well, he was my escape route. Like he showed me what life could be. Like, I went through major depression once he was in prison. And it's crazy because it's like, how can you go through depression from someone who hurt you? But it's like, it's not necessarily the domestic violence. It's like, there's more to it than just, oh, he hurt me. It's an emotional bind. It's like, it's just more than what it is. And I feel like it's important for people to know you don't have to get back with someone to feel happy with yourself. Because most of the times people get back with someone that hurt them because, oh, well, he loves me, he didn't mean it. Or, oh, well, I love him. But first thing first is you have to love yourself. And it's like, I would not want my daughter or my future nieces or nephews to be like, oh, well, she did it, so it's okay. It's not okay. It's like, I had to learn to relive without him and to kind of figure out who I am. And it's hard to stay away sometimes. It really is. Like, till this day, like, I would be lying to you if I told you I don't ever think about seeing or talking to him again. But the thing that pulls me back is like, you can't necessarily let yourself fall. You have to like keep rising and keep going, even if that means without them.